I know what you're thinking. A sweet gray-haired woman like me, sitting here with a nice quilt and a cup of tea, surely hasn't seen much excitement. Get out of my way, you greedy old fool. That was the line that started it. That was the phrase that brought 50 years of marriage, 3 decades of motherhood, and a lifetime of hard-earned peace crashing down around me. Just 20 minutes after my daughter-in-law, Brenda, screamed that at the top of her lungs and threw a trash can through the driver's side window of my old pickup. Scattering safety glass like glitter, they both realized what a catastrophic, irreversible mistake they had made. The sound of shattering glass is a cold, sharp thing. It doesn't just break silence, it breaks promises. And I knew, standing there, watching the plastic bin bounce back onto the gravel, that the promise of a peaceful retirement, of a loving family, was truly over. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. I'd love to know if you're listening from a place where the stars still shine bright. It warms this old heart to know where my words travel. Let me back up and tell you exactly how Elara Vance, a woman who spent 42 years growing alfalfa and raising dairy cattle, ended up watching her own only child and his wife utterly self-destruct in a spectacle I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. Because trust me, this was the furthest thing from the retirement plan my late husband Arthur and I had mapped out. The Vance homestead had been in my hands for 42 years. Arthur and I bought it in 1982 for $47,000, and we put in the kind of work that molds bone and calluses soul. We raised everything on that land: corn, cattle, and eventually our son, Marcus. 3 months ago, I finally signed the papers. I sold the 280-acre homestead to a major development company for $920,000. It was a good price, a fair price, and it secured my future, giving me the kind of stability I'd never had, even when the farm was thriving. Of course, what I hadn't properly factored in was that Marcus, my 35-year-old boy, the one who worked in risk management, which, as far as I could tell, meant he wore a too-tight suit and shuffled papers in a climate-controlled office, had been counting that money as his inheritance since he turned 16. Marcus is tall, like his father, but he has the kind of soft, pale hands that have never touched a plow or pulled a calf. He carries himself with a perpetual air of annoyance, like the world is constantly interrupting him. His wife, Brenda, she's another story entirely. Brenda is a whirlwind of designer clothes and misplaced ambition. She doesn't ask for things. She orbits them until they are pulled into her gravitational field. Her primary ambition in life, it seemed, was to ensure that Marcus was never uncomfortable and that their house was always the newest and biggest in the subdivision. At 74, I've learned a thing or two about reading people, especially my own kin. So when Marcus showed up at my new, smaller house last Tuesday, carrying a bottle of cheap grocery store wine and flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, I knew precisely what was coming. I had downsized, mind you. The old farmhouse was part of the sale. I'd bought a lovely little place, a ranch style with 5 acres of pasture and a barn just big enough for a couple of horses, 20 minutes down the road. It felt like a dollhouse after the homestead, but it was mine. And the mortgage was paid in full with the first installment of the sale money. "Mom, we need to talk," Marcus announced, trying to let himself in with the hand that wasn't holding the wine. He tried to act like he owned the place, which of course he thought he did. I held the screen door firm. "Marcus," I said, my voice as dry as our August hay crop, "you're 35 years old. When you want to visit your mother, you call first and you ask. You don't just show up demanding conversations." The fake smile evaporated. "It's about the money, Mom. The closing went through, didn't it?" "The lawyers called me." "It went through," I confirmed, stepping out onto the porch so I could shut the main door behind me. I didn't want him inside. I didn't want his nervous, entitled energy staining the new curtains. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. He switched instantly from entitled son to salesman. "Mom, look, you've been so incredible. We, Brenda and I, we're so proud of you for securing the sale. But honestly, that money, it's doing nothing sitting in a checking account. You need a proper financial plan." I folded my arms. "I have a financial plan, Marcus. It involves paying off the new house and living comfortably on the interest." He scoffed. "Interest? What is that, 3%? Mom, you need to be aggressive. And I just so happen to have the perfect opportunity. I'm starting my own independent risk assessment firm. It's huge. We're talking Fortune 500 potential. All I need is the initial capitalization. This was the part I had rehearsed for in my head. I had seen this coming since he was 19 and asked me to co-sign a loan for a classic car he crashed 2 months later. And how much is this initial capitalization, Marcus? I asked, keeping my voice level, not rising to his bait. He beamed. The beam was entirely false, but it was wide. We're asking for $900,000. 95% of the total sale price. You put in the capital, you get 60% equity in the company. Brenda and I still do all the work, but you get the massive return. It's a win-win, Mom. You're securing our future and yours. I looked at the wine he was holding, a $12 Pinot Noir, and then at his face, which was already starting to sweat under the pressure. He was asking for nearly all of the money I had earned, sweated over, and planned on for the rest of my life. And he thought he could sell me on a 60% equity stake in a business that hadn't even registered with the state yet. No, I said. It was a small word, barely a whisper, but it hung in the hot afternoon air like a stone dropped in a pond. The ripples were immediate. What? I said no, Marcus. The answer is no. He tried to laugh it off. Mom, come on. This isn't a joke. We're talking about a legacy. We're talking about making that farm money work for us. You won't even need it. You're set up here, and you have your Social Security. This is for the family. This is not for the family, son. This is for your ego and Brenda's new landscaping ideas. That money is my security. Your father and I worked 42 years to earn that sale. I am 74 years old. I will not put my future, the future Arthur worked for, on a gambling table for a business idea that smells like desperation and new cologne. His face went from pale to a dangerous mottled red. The salesman persona vanished. The entitled son, the one I had tried to discipline since he was 10, erupted. You can't be serious. You're going to hoard the family money? That land was supposed to be mine eventually. I've been waiting for this. Brenda and I are already moving forward on the new house, counting on this capital for the down payment. I cut him off, my voice finally rising, infused with the quiet steel Arthur had always respected. And that, Marcus, is your mistake. You planned based on a dream, not a document. The land was mine. The money is mine. It's a gift, not a right. And you've just lost the chance for even a gift. I pointed to his car, which was idling loudly in the driveway. Go home. Call me when you can speak respectfully to your mother. He threw the wine bottle, not at me, but onto the lawn, where it shattered soundlessly against the soft grass, thankfully. Then he got into his car and sped off. I knew the storm was only just beginning. For the next 3 weeks, the silence was deafening. And yet, it was louder than any screaming match. Marcus wouldn't answer my calls. He didn't respond to my texts. It was the classic punishment, the withholding of affection, the attempt to make me feel guilty for my own financial independence. Brenda, however, was less subtle. She took to social media, Brenda, 3 weeks ago. It's so heartbreaking when people prioritize hoarding over family. Some people don't understand the concept of a legacy. Family first. Disappointed, Brenda, 2 weeks ago. Just finished making a 6-figure deal for the firm, but still waiting for the initial capital infusion. It's a shame when simple old-fashioned jealousy holds back progress. I saw the posts. My neighbor, a sweet woman named Clara, who was much better at this internet business than I was, had set up a dummy account to monitor them for me. That woman is a menace. Ilara, Clara huffed over a cup of Earl Grey. She's desperate, honey, I corrected her. And desperation makes people ugly. You see, the problem wasn't the money itself. The problem was that Marcus and Brenda had already used the money. They had leveraged the promise of the inheritance, the $900,000, to secure a line of credit from a small-town lender, a man named Mr. Harrington, for a huge, high-stakes real estate deal they were trying to close. Marcus had promised Harrington the capital would be available within 30 days of the homestead sale closing. And now, the deadline was looming, and the money was locked tight, sitting in my investment account. This wasn't just about a new SUV or a granite countertop. This was about Marcus's reputation and the very foundation of his flimsy career. If he failed to produce the capital by the end of the month, the credit line would be revoked. Harrington would be furious. And Marcus would be blacklisted in their local financial circles. And this brings me to the core of the regret. I had anticipated his maneuver. I knew he was not disciplined enough to wait. When he first mentioned starting his own firm a year ago, I had hired my own lawyer, Mr. Chen, a quiet man who specialized in farm estate planning and trusts. We had set a trap. 2 days before Marcus's deadline with Mr. Harrington, on a Friday afternoon, I was out in the barn, cleaning tack and feeling a peace I hadn't felt in months. The sound of a car speeding up the long gravel driveway was the only warning. It wasn't Marcus's usual sedan. It was Brenda's enormous black SUV. It slammed to a stop 10 feet from the porch. Brenda was out of the car before the engine stopped, screaming Marcus's name. But Marcus wasn't there. It was just Brenda, wearing an expensive silk dress and a face contorted with rage. "You disgusting, spiteful old crone," she shrieked. "You ruined us." Harrington just called Marcus. "The deal is off. He says Marcus is a liar and a cheat." I stepped out of the barn, wiping my hands on a cloth. I walked toward the front of my old, reliable, faded blue Ford F-150, which was parked neatly by the house. "You need to leave my property now, Brenda," I stated calmly. "You think this is over?" She spat. "You think you can take our future and just sit here and sip your herbal tea? We're losing everything because of your jealousy. You hated that we succeeded." "You didn't succeed," I said, my voice quiet but carrying. "You presumed. And presumption is a thief that steals all wisdom." That was when she snapped. It was a terrifying, animalistic moment. She grabbed the metal trash can I kept near the porch for leaves and garden waste. She swung it over her head, her face a mask of pure, ugly fury. "You won't even have this piece of junk. Crash!" The can struck the driver's side window of my truck, and the glass, the safety glass, exploded outward and inward. Shards rained down onto the seat and the floorboard, glittering. The immediate silence was absolute. Brenda stood there, breathing heavily, the empty trash can rolling away. Her silk dress was stained with garden dirt. She had crossed a line, a physical, visible act of violence and vandalism that was impossible to ignore. I didn't flinch. I just stood there watching her face cycle through fury, shock, and then, finally, a dawning fear. I walked over to the side of the house, picked up the watering hose, and sprayed the can and the porch down to settle the fine dust stirred up by the commotion. Then, I pulled my cell phone from my apron pocket. "You know, Brenda," I said, pressing the number for the county sheriff, "I was planning to just leave you two alone with the rest of your lives. But that's a felony." I listened to the ringing, my eyes never leaving hers. "Sheriff? Yes, it's Ilara Vance, out on Route 12. I need to report a felony act of property damage. I have the perpetrator, a Miss Brenda Vance, standing right here." Brenda let out a small, choked sound. "No, Ilara, please." "You can't." "I can," I stated, turning my back to her as the dispatcher picked up. "The perpetrator is wearing a white and blue silk dress." "Yes, she smashed my truck window with a metal trash can." "I need a deputy out here now, please, and I will be pressing charges." "Yes, she's standing right next to the evidence." I hung up. Brenda was shaking now, her face pale. She tried to babble an apology, something about stress, about her new job, but I just held up my hand. "Save it for the deputy, dear. They like a good story." As the sheriff's deputy arrived and Brenda was being questioned, Marcus drove up. He had the worst timing in the world. He got out of his car, frantic, having just come from a disastrous final phone call with Mr. Harrington. "Mom, what the hell is going on? Why is the cop here? Brenda, what did you do?" Brenda was sobbing, pointing a shaky finger at me. "She's pressing charges, Marcus. She ruined us, and now she's going to arrest me." Marcus turned to me, his eyes wild. "Mom, please. We're done, okay? We failed. I'll pay for the window. Just tell the officer it was a misunderstanding. I'm begging you. If Brenda gets a criminal record, I lose my insurance license." This was it, the 20-minute window of regret. I sighed, looking at my son, not with anger, but with a deep, crushing sorrow. He was a man-child, backed into a corner of his own making. "You think I'm the one who ruined you?" I asked him, the deputy standing between us. "No, Marcus. You ruined yourselves the second you counted on money you hadn't earned. You ruined yourselves when you believed the homestead money was a birthright, not a reward for 40 years of sun-up-to-sundown labor." The deputy, a young man named Officer Reyes, cleared his throat. Mr. Vance, your wife is being detained for questioning regarding the destruction of property. We can speak to you down at the station. Marcus's legs gave way, and he stumbled back, leaning against his car. No, I can't be at the station. I have a meeting. No, you don't, I told him, stepping forward, ignoring the deputy's subtle warning glance. Harrington told you the meeting is off, didn't he? And you know why? Because when you came here last week, demanding the money, and I said no, I called my lawyer. Mr. Chen, Marcus looked up, confusion mixing with despair. Mr. Chen, I continued, sent a legal notification to Mr. Harrington yesterday afternoon, stating that any funds promised to you from the sale of the Vance homestead were irrevocably transferred to the Arthur Vance Memorial Scholarship Fund, to be dispersed only by the Board of Trustees, of which I am the sole director. In short, Marcus, the money is not only mine, but it is legally untouchable by you. It can't be leveraged, it can't be borrowed, and it can't be given. The shock on his face was instant. The betrayal, the screaming, the window smashing, all of it had been for nothing. I hadn't just denied him the money. I had legally vaporized it from his reach entirely, guaranteeing my own financial safety and honoring his father in the process. The money you were counting on doesn't exist anymore, Marcus. It's a memorial now. He stared at me, then at the deputy leading Brenda toward the cruiser, and the magnitude of his situation hit him. He had lost his temper, committed a crime, destroyed his wife's reputation, and lost his license, all for a pile of cash that, at that moment, was legally designated as charity. That was the regret. The realization that their own vicious entitlement had caused them to lose not just the money, but their entire professional future. 20 minutes after the glass shattered, the aftermath was exactly what I had wanted. Peace. Brenda paid for the damage, of course, but the charges stood. She was sentenced to community service and a stiff fine, and Marcus did indeed lose his ability to work in his sector. They filed for bankruptcy, lost their new house deposit, and moved into a small apartment. I don't hear from them much. I send a card on Marcus's birthday, signed simply, Mom. The world outside was still buzzing, full of people I didn't know, maybe people like you. And I wonder, have you ever felt that cold knot of betrayal? Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to just stay with me a minute. Take a deep breath. I bought those 5 acres, the ones with the small barn and the quiet pasture, with the intention of finally slowing down. But I found myself working harder than ever, though now the labor felt like therapy. I installed a greenhouse, started a small community garden project, and even bought a couple of gentle old quarter horses, just to have life moving around the place again. My phone buzzed one evening as I was watching the sunset. It was a text from a young man named Alex, whose family had run a feed store down the road from the homestead for years. Mrs. Vance, I'm planning on taking out a loan to expand the store, and my business partner has been pressuring me to co-sign the whole thing. After hearing about what you went through and what you did with the trust, I told him no. I stood my ground. He didn't like it, but I told him I couldn't risk my family's legacy. Thank you for showing me it's okay to protect yourself, I smiled as I typed back. Good for you, honey. Never let anyone make you feel guilty for keeping what you've earned. Presumption is the thief of wisdom. Remember that. The stars came out over my little 5 acres. The old homestead was gone now, sold to developers who would turn it into suburban sprawl. But what Arthur and I had built on that land, and what I rebuilt in the wake of Marcus and Brenda's betrayal, my strength, my independence, my ability to set and hold a boundary, that was mine forever. Marcus had tried to make me a victim. Instead, he'd simply made me a survivor, a protector of my own peace. And in the end, that was a gift I hadn't expected, but one I would treasure for the rest of my days. Some inheritances, after all, are worth far more than money, and no one, not even family, can steal what truly belongs to you: your dignity. The whole ordeal taught me that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that lead to the quietest peace.